The champagne was Dom Perignon, the view was Manhattan's skyline, and the man pouring it was my husband of 12 years, celebrating what he called the deal of a lifetime. Marcus had always been charming, devastatingly so, but that night in our penthouse apartment, his smile carried an edge I'd never seen before. He raised his glass to mine, his eyes gleaming with the kind of excitement that should have thrilled me, but instead sent a chill down my spine. "To us, Sophia," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "To our future. To never having to worry about money again." I should have been ecstatic. After years of Marcus's startup failures and my own grinding work as a forensic accountant, cleaning up other people's financial messes, we were finally about to be wealthy beyond our wildest dreams. But something felt wrong. Marcus had been secretive for weeks, taking hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room, working late on his laptop with documents he quickly minimized when I walked by. When I'd asked him about the mysterious new investment opportunity, he deflected with kisses and promises that I'd understand everything soon. "What exactly are we celebrating?" I asked, setting down my untouched champagne. "You still haven't told me the details of this deal." Marcus's smile never wavered, but I caught the flicker of something annoyance, fear, in his eyes. "Baby, you know how these things work. NDAs, confidentiality agreements. I can't discuss specifics until everything's finalized. But trust me, this is it. This is our ticket out of the middle class." The words stung more than he intended. My salary as a senior forensic accountant was hardly middle class, and I'd been the one keeping us afloat through his endless entrepreneurial experiments. The failed food truck, the app that never launched, the cryptocurrency mining operation that lost more than it made. Each failure had been my problem to solve, my credit to repair, my savings to deplete. "Our ticket," I repeated, my professional instincts finally overriding my desire to believe in us. "Marcus, what aren't you telling me?" He moved closer, his hands finding my shoulders with the practiced ease of someone who knew exactly which buttons to push. "Sophia, love, you're overthinking this. You know what your problem is? You spend all day looking for fraud and embezzlement, so you see conspiracies everywhere. Sometimes a good deal is just a good deal." But I wasn't a naive wife anymore. I was a forensic accountant with 15 years of experience unraveling financial deception. And every instinct I'd honed in my career was screaming that my husband was lying to me. The next morning, while Marcus was at what he claimed was a final strategy meeting, I did what I should have done weeks ago. I started investigating my own husband. What I found in his browsing history, his email drafts, and the financial documents carelessly left in his laptop's download folder made my blood run cold. Marcus hadn't stumbled onto a legitimate investment opportunity. He had been recruited as a key investor in something called the Meridian Wealth Collective, a sophisticated Ponzi scheme that promised returns of 30% quarterly by leveraging AI-driven cryptocurrency arbitrage and blockchain optimization. The language was deliberately complex, designed to confuse potential victims with technical jargon that sounded revolutionary but meant absolutely nothing. The scheme was massive, targeting high-net-worth individuals and promising exclusive access to a revolutionary trading algorithm that supposedly generated consistent profits by exploiting micro-inefficiencies in global cryptocurrency markets. Investors were required to commit minimum amounts of $500,000, with higher tiers offering even greater returns. The marketing materials were glossy and professional, featuring testimonials from supposed early investors who had already made millions. But I recognized the pattern immediately. The returns were too consistent, too good to be true. Real trading, even with sophisticated algorithms, involved risk and volatility. This promised nothing but profits, month after month, with mathematical precision that defied the chaotic nature of actual financial markets. It was textbook fraud, and my husband had fallen for it completely. Worse, as I dug deeper into his communications, I discovered the true scope of his betrayal. Marcus hadn't just invested our savings. He had mortgaged our apartment, liquidated my retirement accounts using forged documents with my signature, and even borrowed against the life insurance policy I'd bought to protect us. In total, he had committed nearly $2 million to the scheme. Money we didn't have. Money that was gone forever. The emails between Marcus and his investment advisor, a man named Jonathan Caldwell, revealed the depth of my husband's desperation and greed. Caldwell had played him perfectly, starting with small test investments that generated quick returns to build trust, then gradually increasing the pressure to invest more. This opportunity won't last forever, Caldwell had written. The algorithm is so effective that we're having to limit new investors to prevent market saturation. You're lucky to be getting in at this level. Marcus had eaten it up, responding with the enthusiasm of a man who thought he'd found a shortcut to wealth. But the most damning evidence was an email thread from just 3 days ago, where Caldwell had informed Marcus that the quarterly distribution was ready, but it could only be accessed by upgrading to Platinum tier, with an additional $300,000 investment. Marcus had replied immediately, asking about liquidating more assets. He wasn't just a victim of the scam, he was actively trying to dig us deeper into the hole. I printed everything. Every email, every document, every piece of evidence of the fraud. Then I did something that felt like a betrayal of my own marriage. I called the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. As a forensic accountant, I'd worked with federal investigators before, and I knew Special Agent Rebecca Morrison personally. Within 2 hours, she was sitting in my living room, reviewing the evidence with the grim efficiency of someone who'd seen this story too many times. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, photographing the documents with her phone. "From what I can tell, about 8 months. But he only made the major investments in the last 6 weeks." My voice sounded hollow, detached, as if I were discussing a case involving strangers instead of my own destroyed life. Agent Morrison looked up from the papers. "Sophia, I have to ask, did you know? Did you authorize any of these transactions?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Of course not. He forged my signature on the retirement account liquidations. I had no idea. He even knew my account numbers. She nodded, making notes. "The good news is that you're clearly a victim here, not a co-conspirator. The bad news is that your husband is in serious legal trouble. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery. He's looking at federal charges even before we get to the Ponzi scheme itself." I felt numb. 12 years of marriage, reduced to a list of federal crimes. "There's something else," Agent Morrison continued gently. "We've been tracking Meridian Wealth Collective for months. Your husband's information is going to be crucial to our investigation, but I need you to understand. Once we move forward, there's no going back. He'll be arrested, probably within the week." I looked around our apartment, the penthouse that was no longer ours, filled with furniture we could no longer afford, overlooking a city that suddenly felt foreign and hostile. "He's already destroyed our life," I said quietly. "At least this way, maybe other people won't lose theirs." That evening, Marcus came home with flowers and a bottle of wine, his face glowing with excitement. "Baby, great news. The return on our investment just came through. We're up 40% already. Jonathan says if we can scrape together just a little more capital, we could double that by Christmas." I watched him pour the wine, this man I'd loved and trusted, and felt nothing but pity and disgust. "Marcus, we need to talk." He set down the bottle, finally reading something in my expression. "What's wrong?" I slid the stack of printed emails across the coffee table. "You tell me." The color drained from his face as he recognized his own words. His mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. "Sophia, I can explain, can you? Can you explain how you stole $2 million from us? Can you explain how you forged my signature? Can you explain how you mortgaged our home without telling me?" He reached for me, but I stepped away. "Baby, listen, I know this looks bad, but it's not what you think. This is a real opportunity. Jonathan showed me the trading records, the algorithm. It's a Ponzi scheme, Marcus. My voice was steady, professional, the tone I used when explaining financial fraud to clients. Everything you've invested is gone. Jonathan Caldwell is a criminal, and so are you. He stared at me, and for a moment I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not embarrassment or regret, but raw terror. You don't understand, he whispered. I did this for us. I wanted to give you everything. The house in the Hamptons, the vacations, the security. You wanted to give me stolen money. I picked up my phone. It's over, Marcus. I've already called the FBI. The transformation was instantaneous. The charming husband disappeared, replaced by something desperate and ugly. You did what? His voice was a snarl. How could you betray me like that? I'm your husband. You betrayed yourself, I replied. And you betrayed me every time you signed my name to documents I never saw, every time you lied about where you were going, every time you chose your greed over our marriage. He started pacing, running his hands through his hair. Okay, we can fix this. We can get the money back. Jonathan said there's a grace period, a cooling-off option. There is no money, Marcus. There never was. Jonathan Caldwell has been stealing from people like you for years. The only thing he's good at is finding marks desperate enough to believe that making money is easy. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Agent Morrison and 2 other officers. Marcus saw them too, and something broke in his face. Sophia, please. Don't let them in. We can work this out. I'll make it right. But I was already opening the door. The arrest was quick and professional. Marcus didn't resist, but he kept looking at me with an expression of wounded betrayal, as if I were the one who had destroyed our life. As they led him away in handcuffs, he called out, I love you, Sophia. I did this because I love you. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling older than my 34 years. The aftermath was a blur of legal proceedings, asset seizures, and media attention. The Meridian Wealth Collective scandal broke 3 weeks later, making national news as one of the largest Ponzi schemes of the decade. Over 400 investors had lost nearly $300 million. Marcus was one of dozens arrested, though his case attracted particular interest because of his wife's role in exposing the fraud. The divorce papers were filed while he was still in federal custody. His lawyer called it vindictive. I called it survival. 6 months later, I was sitting in a much smaller apartment in Queens, rebuilding my life one careful step at a time. The bankruptcy had wiped out most of our debts, though my credit was destroyed and would take years to repair. I'd kept my job. My employer was surprisingly understanding about the situation and had even gotten a promotion. Apparently, having personally experienced financial fraud made me even better at detecting it in others. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. He wrote me letters at first, still trying to convince me that he'd been a victim too, that his only crime was loving me too much and wanting to provide for our future. I stopped reading them after the first few. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. The final twist came almost a year later, when Agent Morrison called with an update on the case. Jonathan Caldwell had been arrested in the Cayman Islands, trying to flee with $50 million in stolen funds. During his interrogation, he'd revealed something that both surprised and vindicated me. Marcus hadn't just been a victim of the Ponzi scheme. In the final months, as the scheme began to collapse, Caldwell had recruited him to help find new investors. Marcus had been working to bring in friends, colleagues, even his own brother, promising them the same fictional returns that had seduced him. My husband hadn't just been greedy and gullible. He'd been actively complicit in defrauding others. I thought you should know, Agent Morrison said. It doesn't change his sentence, but it explains why he was so panicked when you confronted him. He wasn't just afraid of losing money, he was afraid of going to prison for conspiracy to commit fraud. I thanked her and hung up, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Closure. I'd married a man I thought I knew, loved a person who turned out to be a stranger. But I'd also discovered something about myself. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. I'd lost my marriage, my home, and my financial security, but I'd kept my integrity. And in a world where money could make people do terrible things to the people they claimed to love, that felt like the most valuable asset of all. 2 years later, I was promoted to senior partner at my firm. My apartment in Queens had become home, filled with furniture I'd bought myself and books I'd actually had time to read. I'd started dating again, carefully, with the hard-won wisdom of someone who'd learned that charm and love weren't the same thing. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered what would have happened if I'd chosen to trust Marcus instead of my instincts. How many more people would have lost their savings? How much deeper would we have fallen before the inevitable collapse? But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. I'd learned that the best revenge against betrayal wasn't anger or vindictiveness. It was building a life so fulfilling that the betrayer's absence felt like a gift rather than a loss. Marcus had tried to steal my future. Instead, he'd accidentally given me the chance to create a better one. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to make me wealthy, he'd made me rich in ways he'd never understand.